modes. You've heard that before on my channel. I think I talk about them a lot because I'm asked a lot. And really, it's not this huge mystery. Modes are scales. Scales are alphabets. And from these different alphabets, you can express yourself and tell different stories. But it's important to be able to hear the modes. And that's exactly what we're going to do today with this very simple exercise that involves 3 shapes. That's coming up. Hi, my name is David Wallerman. Welcome to this channel, which is all about helping guitar players like you find your voice on the instrument, develop it in order to tell your own personal musical story. That's really the goal in all these videos. It's not about learning scales, formulas, and theory things and techniques. No, the real goal is to express yourself. And today we're going to look at different alphabets. We're going to look at 7 of them. I call them alphabets because it makes things simpler. I think there's a lot of extra difficulty that sometimes is not necessary. It's just added with the vocabulary that people use, and that's scary. It doesn't have to be. We understand what an alphabet is. From that alphabet, we come up with words. From these words, we come up with sentences, and from these sentences, we come up with stories. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We're taking a scale, we're making a lick, we're making a phrase, and we're just basically building our musical story with those. So there are a lot of different alphabets, tons of them in music. But today we're going to look at the alphabets that are found in the church mode box. And there's 7 of them. And they have some similarities, and they have some differences. And if we can really pinpoint and bring out those differences, that's how we can bring out the color, the unique color of that mode. And that's what we're going to do today. But for that, we're going to start with the similarities of these modes. The idea here is to look at our chart with the construction of these modes. So stick with me. I'm not going to make this complicated. The formulas of these modes are basically the fingerprint of these modes. What makes a Dorian mode Dorian is its fingerprint. And we're going to compare them, and we're going to find some similarities. What we're going to start by doing is look at the triads, and we're going to see that we can find 3 different types of triads. We have what we call a major triad, which is a triad made of a root, a major third, and a perfect fifth. And if we compare these 7 different musical alphabets, we see that Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian all share that major triad. So we're going to shift those modes, those alphabets, on one side of the screen. We're going to call those the major scales. There are 3 of them, Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian. Why are they major? Because they have a major third. It's the third that determines the nature of that musical element, whether it's a scale or a chord or a lick. It doesn't matter. You look at the third. So we've got these 3 modes in one side, the major modes. Another triad that we can find is the minor triad, which is made of a root, a minor third, and a perfect fifth. And we can see that within the 4 alphabets remaining, we have Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian. So we're going to put those on a side, and those are for the minor triads. Now, there is one that is left. That mode, the Locrian mode, doesn't fit a typical major triad or a typical minor triad. Why? Because of the fifth. The fifth is diminished. So we're going to leave that Locrian aside. So 3 different triads. Let me show you how to play these triads first. For this, we're going to use strings 2, 3, and 4, and we'll be in the key of A, which means that A will be the root for all the triads that we're going to see, the 3 different shapes. Let's start with the major triad. We're going to have our A on the 4th string, 7th fret. The major third is on the 3rd string, 6th fret. And the perfect fifth is found on the 2nd string, 5th fret. That's a major triad. So this musical element right here can be found in A Ionian, A Lydian, and A Mixolydian. In other words, if I only play this, well, you don't know which mode you're in. In the same way, if you had a backing track just made of this, you could play A Ionian, A Lydian, A Mixolydian. Okay, Okay, let's continue. We're now going to look at a minor triad, the minor triad which is found in Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian. We're also in the key of A here. We are using the same exact strings. It's very similar from the major triad. The only thing that changes is that major third, which was on the third string, 6th fret, it becomes a minor third, and that's 1 fret below. So that would be on the third string, 5th fret. That's our minor triad. Root, minor third, perfect 5th. And that minor triad is found in Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian. So if we had a backing track made of this, pretty boring, but I could play Dorian, I could play Phrygian, and I could play Aeolian. Okay, last but not least, we're going to look at the Locrian one. The Locrian was very close to the minor triad except for the 5th, which is a diminished 5th. So we're going to take our minor triad here, root, minor third, perfect 5th, and move that perfect 5th 1 fret below to have a diminished 5th. So we have this very unique triad, and if we hear this, our ear is going to be directed towards the Locrian mode. Now, what do we do with these 3 different shapes? Major triad, minor triad, and what we call a diminished triad, in order to hear the modes? Well, let me show you. Word of caution here. I'm about to show you where these modes come from, and you probably know this. And a lot of players understand this and take that and just run with it and only use the shortcut. I am kind of against that shortcut because, well, that's probably the topic of a different video, but in a nutshell, if you only take the shortcut that I'm about to show you and bring everything back to the parent major scale, then all your improvisations are most likely going to be heavily influenced by your fingers. And yes, you might think that that's the only way to go, but it's not, because if you only do it like that, then your music is only generated by the amount of licks that you've learned, and you're never gonna really embrace the music that is inside. You're always going back to that parent major scale. Did that not make sense at all? Don't worry about it then, that's completely okay. But if you're one of the players who always brings everything back to the major scale to figure out things, there's a danger with that. And I will make another video on that topic at some point. All right, anyways, so modes, those alphabets that we just talked about, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, they are extracted from a major scale. That's where they come from. And that's what I was saying. A lot of players kind of refer back to that major scale since they're extracted from it. We need to stop doing that, I think, and really see every mode as a unique and individual scale, not extracted from anything else. That has its use as far as visualizing the fretboard, but in terms of hearing those modes, it's not very useful. So try to forget that and see them as unique and individual modes. But we do know that they're extracted from a common major scale. Here's how it works. We've got a major scale, which is also known as Ionian. That's one of the modes that we had. And if we play that Ionian mode from its 2nd note, that becomes a 2nd note Dorian mode. And then from the 3rd note, that becomes a 3rd note Phrygian mode, whatever that note is, and so forth. So there's a particular order there. We're going to use that to our advantage to hear the modes. All right, here's the order: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. I realize that this might be a little overwhelming for some of you. That's okay. Don't pause the video. Don't leave yet. Just stick with me to the end and see if this kind of thing is something that you want to do. If it is, I'll give you some practical steps to move on. But just consider this: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. Now, these are all separated by something, and we need to know that something, the intervals. And I'm going to list that on the screen also. The next step is simply to associate with each of these modes triads, the triads that we've learned. So instead of having Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, now we have major triad, minor triad, major triad, minor triad, and diminished triad. All right, let's start with Ionian. I'm going to show you how this works. We're going to start with the triad that is extracted from a Ionian. That's easy. That's a major triad. And just by playing this major triad here in A, I eliminated 4 other modes. I eliminated all the minor modes. That's Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian, and of course Locrian. So just by playing that. But we need something else in order to know that we are in Ionian. Well, let's look at what we have next following the order. Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, and so forth. After Ionian, we have Dorian. And that's 2 frets higher. And Dorian is a minor mode. Okay, so we have this. And I could play that A on the bass here, which is open string, 5th fret. Is that enough to know that we are an Ionian? Unfortunately, no. Why? Because Mixolydian also has this happening where we start with a major triad, and then we have a minor triad for Aeolian, because Mixolydian, Aeolian, 2 frets higher, minor. So this chord progression could be Ionian, but also Mixolydian. Okay, so that's not enough. What about the one that is just before Ionian? It does a big circle. Well, before Ionian, we have Locrian, and that's 1 fret lower. And that's diminished triad. And we know that there is only one space with that diminished triad. So this has to be strictly Ionian. If I play this, that's enough to really know that, yeah, that's Ionian. There's nowhere else where you can find this. Now I can add other triads if I want to. Do whatever I want, but that is really pointing us towards Ionian. That's characteristic of Ionian. So Ionian would be the major triad, and then a diminished triad, a half step below. And keep that bass consistent, that's going to help. All right, awesome. How about we try this with Dorian? Dorian is a minor mode, therefore we have a minor triad. Is this enough to know that we're in Dorian? No, because we could also be in Phrygian and Aeolian. We share the same minor triad. Well, what is after Dorian? Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian. Okay, Phrygian is 2 frets higher, and that's minor too. The question is, are there any other minor modes, like Dorian, that minor triad, that are followed by another minor triad 2 frets higher? Well, let's take a look. That eliminates Phrygian for sure, because Phrygian is minor, but the next one up is Lydian, and that's a major triad, a half step above. Therefore, yes, this could not be Phrygian, but could it be Aeolian? What do we have after Aeolian? We have Locrian, which is diminished. Therefore, this is pure Dorian right there. And then you can add anything else you want, as long as you follow the corresponding triads. And you can do that with each of the 7 modes. I'm going to encourage you to do the work on your own. I could show you all these things, but as long as you follow the process, the rest is second nature. It's by doing the work, figuring things out, that things are going to stick. And that's really important when you're working on the instrument. Not just grabbing a book and memorizing everything. There's a part of involvement that you need to have in order for things to really make sense on your instrument as you're doing it. Do it. And if you want to go further with music theory and you want to have a new type of approach, I encourage you to sign up to my free music theory DNA course. It's an email course, video email course. I will be sending you the first email Monday. And at the end of that, it's a 3-part course. At the end, I will send you an invitation to join my Guitar Infusion course. That's a big, big, big course. It's self-paced, and it's basically unlocking all the music theory in a very practical way with some things that you will have to do as well. But I'm going to guide you through the whole thing. Anyways, more on that coming later. You can sign up for free for the Music Theory DNA worksheet. It's going to give you a good kickstart. And by the end, if you don't sign up to my paid course, that's all right. No worries at all. I really want you to progress. That's what I love. Thank you for watching this. If you have not subscribed to my channel yet, you should, because I have about 3 videos coming every single week helping guitar players like you find their voice, find new ideas, and develop them in order to tell your own personal musical story. Nobody can say it the way you say it on the guitar. I'll see you next time.